It is a pleasure to speak to you today at the Africa FinTech Summit. My name is Bob Seeman, and I'm a California attorney, electrical engineer, and businessman. I've also written a book, The Coinmen, which is the most comprehensive critique of Bitcoin. Bitcoin is a confidence game with the excitement of gambling, the viral marketing of a pyramid scheme, and the fake profits of a Ponzi scheme. Bitcoin trading provides the appearance of legitimacy, but with no regulatory oversight, it is manipulated by the major owners. Bitcoin is not money, not a store of value, not an investment, and not even an asset from an economic perspective. Bitcoin is simply unlicensed gambling. So what is Bitcoin? Forget about all the jargon about blockchain and decentralization. It's all irrelevant. A light bulb is a light bulb because it helps you see in the dark. It's a light bulb regardless of whether it uses an incandescent bulb or an LED bulb. It does not matter how Bitcoin works. What matters is what Bitcoin does. There's no need to look at the technology of Bitcoin. The Bitcoin promoters love talking about what the technology of Bitcoin is, the blockchain. They think they have found something new and unexplored. Blockchain is actually a combination of technologies going back to the 1980s. Promoters are using blockchain technology jargon as a distraction, much like a magician who distracts while he steals your watch. Bitcoin operates like a Google spreadsheet readable by everyone in the world. It is a record of all Bitcoin transactions going back to Bitcoin's invention in 2009. Bitcoin is very slow and limited. The only thing interesting about it is how the spreadsheet is updated. So how do you keep somebody from rewriting the history of Bitcoin transactions if everyone can get a copy of the public ledger? Which version of the ledger is accurate? Many people are holding copies of this ledger all over the world. That's where the mining comes in. All mining is the purposeful waste of a massive amount of electricity to prove that the record is intact. Anyone who would want to attack the record has to waste more electricity than all the other honest miners put together. Without the waste of a lot of electricity 24/7, 365 days a year, somebody can rewrite history cheaply. Traditional money transmitter intermediaries are under legal obligation to block bad activity. Bitcoin eliminates intermediaries by making everyone's balances public, but pseudo-anonymous, on a single ledger, the Bitcoin blockchain. An individual is represented by a long sequence of random-looking numbers, but remains pseudo-anonymous. The Bitcoin public ledger is like a public ledger in a town square, so that everyone's bank balance is public, but identified only by pseudonyms. For A to pay B, B checks to make sure that A's pseudonym has a balance, and if so, posts that transaction to the public ledger. Now everyone knows that A's pseudonym is down by a certain amount of Bitcoin, and B's pseudonym is up by that same amount of Bitcoin. Bitcoin is not a good medium of exchange. Few merchants accept it. Few people want to spend it. The people who own it hang on to it to sell it later when it's worth more. Why would they want to part with it just to buy a coffee? They certainly don't want to be like that guy in 2010 who bought 2 pizzas for 10,000 Bitcoin. That's a couple $100 million today. Less than 0.15% of Bitcoin transactions are for legal goods, and services. Bitcoin is used for more illegal purchases than legal purchases. While companies may say, we accept payments in Bitcoin, they're almost always simply using a service that allows the merchant to price in US dollars, present the Bitcoin price to the customer, transfer the Bitcoin, and turn the Bitcoin into US dollars. The merchant simply receives US dollars. Modern finance requires that electronic transfers be reversible for a short period of time. It allows an undo in case of fraud. The ability to reverse transactions does not exist with Bitcoin. Bitcoin is not a good medium of exchange. Even in El Salvador, where they made Bitcoin forced legal tender, very few people used it. It's forced legal tender in El Salvador because accepting Bitcoin is not an option. Every person and business must accept Bitcoin. Also, everyone was given a Bitcoin wallet and a free $30 of Bitcoin. However, most simply cashed in the Bitcoin for US dollars. Very few transactions are being conducted with Bitcoin in El Salvador. It's been a complete failure. There's been almost no new adoption in 2022, and only 1.6% of remittances, the rationale for the introduction of Bitcoin, are in Bitcoin. Bitcoin does not bank the unbanked. If Bitcoin investors really cared about the unbanked, they might want to consider investing in improving systems that work, such as M-Pesa. Bitcoin is not used as a unit of account. Even conferences about Bitcoin price their tickets in US dollars. Bitcoin is not a good store of value. It regularly drops 10% overnight. 4 times in the last 4 years, it's dropped by more than 50% over a few weeks. The main reason that Bitcoin fails as good money is due to high volatility. This volatility gives the clue as to what Bitcoin really is: gambling. Many Bitcoin promoters have finally realized that Bitcoin is not money. They now argue Bitcoin is digital gold, that it has all the properties of gold. Bitcoin is completely different than gold. The characteristics of gold over thousands of years are non-corroding, it's shiny and wonderful to look at, it exists in limited quantities, well-known globally, difficult to counterfeit. It's a soft metal for processing for jewelry, industry, coins and bars, and it has unique electrical properties. Half of the gold produced every year is used for jewelry. 10 to 20% is used for industry, and the balance for coins, bars, and bank vaults. Gold is valuable because it is useful. Bitcoin has no legal utility. The price of gold is stable. The price of Bitcoin is not. Gold is inversely correlated to the market. Over the last 2 years, Bitcoin has been correlated to the market at least 50%, and recently over 80%. At the surprise moment when Russian tanks went over the border to Ukraine, Bitcoin tanked, gold did not. Artificial scarcity does not create value. There are thousands of other crypto, more being made all the time. And the major competitor, Ether on the Ethereum network, has no limit. Ether and Bitcoin are correlated 80% to each other. The market sees them as similar, and the crypto exchanges are continually and instantly converting them one into the other in high volumes. Also, there's regular forks. That just means that people can create other types of Bitcoin. There's Bitcoin Cash, Bitcoin Satoshi Vision, BSV. What happens then is the amount of crypto doubles. Marks are people who lose money in a scam. At its peak, 100,000 Americans were buying their first Bitcoin every day. 20% of those buying were buying on credit with money they could not afford to lose. over 75% of Bitcoin owners are now underwater. They bought it for more than it's currently worth. 28% of millennial Americans are buying crypto for their retirement. They are the marks. The trading by Wall Street professionals has added legitimacy to Bitcoin. At the same time, there's trading by major holders who manipulate the price of Bitcoin. Corporations have seen huge profits being made in Bitcoin, and they're getting FOMO too, the fear of missing out. They want some of that action, and that's included Wall Street institutions and large law firms. They too have provided legitimacy. And then there's all the lobbying. One of the biggest lobbies in Washington, D.C. is now big crypto, the crypto industry. They've been lobbying the regulators and the politicians. While crime is being conducted using Bitcoin, it is essential to examine the Bitcoin ecosystem itself. Governments should examine Bitcoin as gambling for every purpose, including enforcement of gambling license requirements, payment of license fees, disclosure of all the rules of the game, proactive prevention of cheating, and advertising restrictions. Bitcoin trading profits should be treated as gambling profits. In the United States, they should be treated as income and not as capital gains. Also, it's very important to protect our youth from gambling addiction. The more that Bitcoin is regulated as what it is, gambling, the less it will be easily used, and the more difficult it will be to use it for crime. One of the promoters of Bitcoin is a Wall Street institution called Fidelity Digital Assets. Their rationale to buy Bitcoin is based on 3 points: that Bitcoin is a store of value, it is a monetary good, and Bitcoin benefits from the Lindy effect. As examined earlier, Bitcoin is not a store of value. Now let's discuss the other 2 points. Fidelity argues that Bitcoin is a monetary good. They define monetary good as a good that is valued for its tradability for other goods, not its consumption. They define money as a tool that allows exchange rather than barter. They state that the more of the following characteristics that a good possesses, the better it can serve as being money: durable, divisible, fungible, portable, verifiable, scarce, and having a track record. While Bitcoin may not be a monetary good, good as in goods and services, Fidelity does not conclude Bitcoin is good money, good as in useful. Fidelity is simply saying that Bitcoin has some characteristics of a medium of exchange, not that it is good money. Because the words sound the same, some Fidelity clients may not understand the distinction between monetary good and good money. The two phrases mean something substantially different to each other. Therefore, the monetary good argument is either irrelevant or misleading. Fidelity's other rationale to buy Bitcoin they call the Lindy effect, which they describe as: the longer that some non-perishable thing survives, the more likely it is to survive in the future. Fidelity argues that since Bitcoin continues, despite all the challenges it has had since it was invented in 2009, it is more likely to survive in the future. It compares Bitcoin's longevity to more recent crypto. The existence of the Lindy effect is not validated. Many information technologies are inconsistent with the Lindy effect. DVDs, faxes, iPod, newspapers. Even if the Lindy effect was valid, Bitcoin has been around only for a very short time compared to fiat money or gold. And it even has not started to be useful. Therefore, Bitcoin can disappear at any time. The basic Bitcoin rationale Decentralization is a myth. There are many aspects of Bitcoin which are centralized. 90% of the mining is performed by 10 organizations. 40% of the Bitcoin is owned by about 1,000 people. Almost all the exchanges are centralized. 5 of them have half the volume. Some of them are owned by the big Bitcoin owners. Stable coins, which are the key to trading Bitcoin and other crypto, are all centralized. The Lightning Network, which speeds up Bitcoin transactions, re-centralizes. What is decentralized finance, or DeFi? It's new financial products and services that broaden access and undercut traditional financial intermediaries. There's 3 aspects to decentralization. Decentralized architectures use digital ledger technology, DLT, maintained on multiple computers and synchronized in real time. Decentralized trust involves the validation of transactions through public consensus mechanisms rather than by trusted intermediaries. Decentralized governance is underpinned by a collective interest in maintaining the system's integrity and security. However, there's many limitations: technical, financial, business model, and regulatory. One business model limitation is that DeFi is currently based on stablecoins, which in turn are often partly backed by Bitcoin and other crypto. One technical limitation is that DeFi is based on so-called smart contracts. One regulatory limitation is that securities law applies. Other laws also apply, such as anti-money laundering and know your customer laws. If code was law, then somebody could simply find a bug in a smart contract and take everyone's money. Then say, well, that's what the code allowed me to do, so it's my money. The code is law, therefore the law says that it's my money. A lot of DeFi assumes that securities law doesn't apply. The key question with securities law is this an investment contract? If it walks like a duck and quacks like a duck and swims like a duck and flies like a duck, it's a duck. However, the regulators do not want to stifle innovation. The message I am explaining to regulators is that there's little innovation to stifle. Much of the current regulation model is let's pick up the pieces afterward. However, stopping things from falling apart in the first place would save billions of dollars of investors' money. A central bank digital currency, or CBDC, is a digital currency that is the liability of the central bank and not a commercial bank. It's the digital equivalent of a printed dollar. Bitcoin uses blockchain distributed ledger technology, or DLT. Some CBDCs may use DLT, but major central banks are skeptical of DLT for technical and regulatory reasons. The US Fed is considering a CBDC, but it appears they will not adopt one for at least the next few years. The US Bankers Association, the ABA, put forward their position to the US Fed in May. Their arguments are as follows. A CBDC is not likely to promote financial inclusion. Free and low-cost bank accounts are widely available at US banks of all sizes. The benefits of a long-term banking relationship go beyond a deposit account. A CBDC is not necessary to maintain the dollar's international role. A CBDC would risk undermining the important role banks play as financial intermediaries. A CBDC would exacerbate a stress event as consumers opt out of private money. A CBDC would likely balloon the Fed's balance sheet and impede the transmission of monetary policy. We must carefully balance the need to prevent financial crimes while protecting privacy. The Fed would be taking on an entirely new role for monitoring customers and their activity. Physical currency, unlike CBDC, is bulky and difficult to move in large amounts. a CBDC would expand the role of government. The Fed would risk becoming politicized as the central point for monitoring and potentially denying transactions and making decisions about the allocation of credit. It has been a great pleasure speaking with you today about the new world of crypto. Thank you.